Hi, I'm Julie Sperling, and welcome to Mosaic Arts Online. In this online course, we'll be tackling one of my favorite exercises, making a mosaic out of just one thing. Now, I'm not talking about making a mosaic out of one kind of material. Oh no, we're going to take one piece of material, chop it up, and then make a mosaic out of it using every last scrap. Now, you can do this exercise with any kind of material, but I've found that it's most challenging and instructive when that material has certain qualities. So to make sure that everyone's on a level playing field, we're going to make our own rocks out of thinset. And I'm going to show you a few different ways to do this, and each one will have a different effect on your final product. This exercise forces you to return to basics and be very mindful and strategic at every turn. But at the same time, it pushes you out of your comfort zone and helps further your artistic practice. So it's equally good for both beginners and seasoned mosaicists. We'll be covering everything from creating your own material out of thinset, cutting it with your hammer and hardie, choosing your substrate, strategizing your plan of attack, and then creating your mosaic. This last part will be especially interesting because we'll be creating lines and flow between the tesserae and also within the tesserae, thanks to the layers and the splotches that we incorporate when we make our thinset rocks. To help you better understand this idea of creating two kinds of line and flow, there will be two 10-minute sections of quiet time with me working and making choices to create the flow within the andamento and also within the colors and the patterns within the rocks. This exercise is deceptive in its simplicity, and I'll share with you all of my tips and tricks to help you get the most out of it. I return to this exercise time and time again, and I learn something new every time that I do. And I know without a doubt that it's made me a better mosaicist, and I think it can do the same for you. In the next section, there's a PDF with all the tools and materials that you'll need to do this project, and let's get started.
Julie, thank you so much for coming to Mosaic Arts Online. This is just incredible to have you here and to share this very creative process you've created here is just awesome. But before we dive into really what the meat of this is, give me a little background on how you got started in mosaic art.
Yeah, you might be surprised to know that I got my start with stained glass and working in crazy paving.
Completely surprised. I had no idea.
So my mom at the time, I was doing stained glass at the time and learning and just really taking off with that. And so she had all these scraps. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, had this nondescript IKEA table in her bedroom, and I was like, I could make that look better. And so I randomly made a mosaic on it, and that's what got me started. And then it was years before I found the hammer and rocks and activism, and when all those three pieces finally came together, that's when.
And you do.
Really
you have an amazing voice with mosaic art, and we're very lucky to have you here in our community. We are. And if you haven't looked into Julie Sperling's mosaics, Google it. And but for while we're here for this course, I want you to kind of get into a little bit more explaining of this than was just in the intro. So in the creative process, you, for the most part, solved a problem by creating your own rocks with thinset to make tesserae. So just elaborate on how all that was born as well.
Sure. So I had first done this exercise with a very special rock. It had a lot of layers and splotches in it, and then it was such a great experience, and I wanted to replicate it because I had learned so much coming out of it that, you know, I was a little bit kind of blocked because I didn't have another one of those rocks. And so not everyone has one of those things. So I thought, well, I can make these things myself. And that's where the thinset rocks came out of. So now I can, you know, whether I have a very cool rock that lends itself well to this exercise or not, I can do it with just thinset.
Yeah, and you can make more and more of it if you need to, so that you can really get it. And part of this process is obviously, for what Julie's teaching, is using one rock to create one piece or one of each of these. So you can go either way, but that's what the whole creativity with Constraint is. But for the beginners, explain why this course is great, that you really don't have to be a very seasoned mosaic artist to even get a lot out of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because you're in control from the very beginning, right? You're creating these thinset tesserae, so you know what you're putting in them. You know how complex you're making them, and so you can make them maybe with just one or two layers to start, and then once you feel comfortable with that, you can kind of raise the bar a little bit. So as you get more comfortable, as you progress with your mosaics and your ability, you add a third color or you add two different techniques together. And so you can always challenge yourself. It's also a really great material for beginners to learn to cut with the hammer and hardie. It's very compliant. It breaks pretty easily without too much muscle. So, and it's expendable. I mean, you're not going to practice on your nice gold smaltie. You're going to practice on what probably would have gone in the garbage anyway. So,
well, and that's what's amazing. And so for that reason, there is a lot to learn in the two different lines and patterns that are happening, which is the andamento and the pattern of the color. So how can people get into that without being too intimidated by it? Because that's really where the process of learning is. And you did tell me your head hurt. A little bit. So how can we get people to not hurt their heads too much and not run away from it?
Yeah, I mean, just know that like my head hurts when I do this. So it's not, you're not doing anything wrong if you're confused and frustrated. But that's all part of it, right? That's what's going to make you better and push you further. So again, it comes back to creating your thinset tesserae in a way that you're biting off only as much or just a little bit more than you think you can chew. And then what's really nice when you're doing these things and creating those two different kinds of flow is that it's teaching you the andamento going across, but then because you're working with these irregular pieces and because you're trying to use every last scrap, you're using what you normally would probably just like brush off your hardie log and into the trash. You're having to be creative and you're having to break the rules. And so it really helps you. I know for me, I wish I had this exercise when I started because I fell into the trap of being much too precise and not being free. And so this really helps you kind of just shake that off and just kind of, you make compromises, you do weird things that you normally wouldn't do, and it really helps kind of push you a little bit further than maybe you're ready for or that you think you're ready for, but you probably are ready for.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's really one of those things that without feeling intimidated, just break it down one piece at a time, one line at a time. And the gratification you get, instead of looking at the whole thing, you can really just sit back and be like, I don't need to make this perfect. It isn't about precise. It's about using each piece and finding the different shapes. And in this course, she really breaks that down for you in the different ways to use the shapes. Using the hammer is just one section just to show you how she breaks these type of tesserae rocks down. And so this is just a great course for anyone that wants to really brush up on their andamento skills. Do it with a material that is really inexpensive and very creative. You can do it with tinted thinset if you have tinted tints to create your thinset, or just gray and white is a great way to get started. So this really does have a lot of opportunity and options to get started and then hone. You can really hone some great skills with this. So I can't thank you enough
it's my pleasure.
For coming here and bringing what you've created out of truly almost thin air in your own way. And we're really lucky to have you here. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.